Welcome back to the Portal to Ascension conference. As the universe would have it, as all collectiveness comes together, sitting in our space, and likened energy frequency attracts likened energy frequency, and if we allow ourselves to calm ourselves down away from the hurriedness, great connections take place. I was coming out of my event. I had just channeled Julius, and I caught a glimpse of this gentleman standing towards the front desk, and can see, the energy field around him. I was actually expecting somebody to sit in my chair for an interview, and presumed possibly that you were him. And then as you were walking back here to our field, I was still kind of thinking the same thing. This must be the person I'm waiting for, or that I'm supposed to be interviewing. And then found out that that wasn't true. So then it's like, okay, who's this? So here he is, okay? So I know by looking at your field that you're an integrated being. Descended from another galaxy. I see 4 beings around you, actually, that possibly shift and take their seat at different times within you. I see energy within you being very challenged as to what you see going on, but I also see that as you walk through a field, that your light transmutes things on your pathway. So you have to you're very cautious about where you walk and who you walk around. That's what I see. So please tell everybody your name and what you do.
Hi, thank you. My name is Dr. Stephen Ezra West, and nickname or stage name, Dr. Ez. And one of the people you see around me, my guess, would be my father,
nice.
Who was also from he didn't come here just to pass the test of this realm. He was here to also just help out. And a lot of us, that's why we're here now, is to help out, right, and make a big difference with accelerating the consciousness of humanity, like you do with the Expansion Network. I know it takes a lot of work to run a show like this. And I did a show with my father. In the first 10 months was the most successful time of his whole career. He had discovered the sodium-potassium pump, basically the engine of the cells.
Oh.
A lot of people think it's the mitochondria, but that's where I call that like the fuel injector, because it takes the glucose and oxygen, makes ATP out of it, which turns on the sodium-potassium pump.
Okay.
It's an electric generator too, but my father wrote formulas with his physics background for what shuts it off, how to turn it back on, which have been totally accepted by all the top medical minds who've ever seen them, and yet not taught in the school system, the public school system,
okay,
or in medical school.
Okay.
And so I had that. When people tell a story, or when they talk about what they're seeing even, I've had a gift my whole life, being able to see what they're seeing while they're talking about it. Right. Whether it's a dream that they have, I can piggyback on their vision and start talking about, the cats you're talking about, they're actually like 8 feet tall, and here's their color pattern and things like that. Well, when it came to listening to my father, who helped a lot of people literally get started on their paths, a lot of the students ended up becoming more famous than him. Not that they were smarter, a lot of times it was because they weren't smarter, but they were able to reach people like the masses at their level better.
Yeah, so we talk often in support of what you're saying. There's, with respect to everybody on the Earth ship, there's a much higher percentage of ignorant, low consciousness people than the high consciousness echelon field of wisdom and integration. And so a lot of times success is going to be on the mass scale, and you just don't connect with that field, right? Like your dad just doesn't connect with that field. You can look at that externally and really see a lot of the unfairness in that. But you can also look at that and have the appreciation that his energy isn't there, right?
Right.
Right?
So I'm told now from the latest conversation I had with a distant cousin who was really close to my father, also more of a person like us, that he's hanging out with Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, Sir Isaac Newton, and some of the greatest scientific minds in history. And it doesn't surprise me to hear things like that.
Yeah.
I got to learn a lot from him. He was my greatest mentor, and one of the things he shared is he was introducing people to not just a metaphor for the tree of life, but scientifically what the fruit of the tree of life actually is in our lives.
Nice.
From the formulas that he wrote with his physics background, and he had one of the top physiologists in history on his advisory board until the day he died, is a guy named Dr. Hyman Samuel Merson. And a lot of the studies that he was publishing, because he was publishing more in a specific area of science than anybody ever had. So the biggest medical research project in history, still today, was actually to hush all that up.
Sure.
Mostly to hush Hyman Samuel Merson up. So with international military forces, they even went behind the Iron Curtain, which is a big deal back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they gathered all the top scientific minds together. My father was the first non-medical doctor to be a member of that organization because he knew so much about it.
Yeah.
And he showed up, he'd already picked up their ball and started running with it. The year after, they decided to start that organization to bury it. And it's interesting because Hyman Samuel Merson, he's the one who published in Circulation that we don't even have a positive pressure in our bloodstream without the subpressure lymphatic vessels. And that was back in the mid-60s in the same medical journal that is published by the American Heart Association. And how many of our cardiologists even know that? That's one of the studies they wanted to bury, but it's now available because thanks to PubMed.gov, the National Library of Medicine, they went ahead and made their whole archives public, forgetting about what they'd buried back in the 60s. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to uncover some of the other articles that Merson published. But people say if he's on your father's advisory board, he doesn't need anybody else. He was on the top physiology boards globally. And anyway, so one of the things that I was gifted 25 years ago through an accident that I had on a wave runner. I was T-boned. My left leg was, both wave runners were totaled with my knee in between them. It felt like two big sledgehammers coming together.
So you were on the water when this took place?
And I've had accidents on the water before. But this is a big one, and I had a lot of cheerleading and dance background. In fact, I was a University of Utah yell leader.
Oh, that's funny.
While that was happening,
Okay.
I just did 2 weeks of camps for high school kids, and in
Okay.
6 weeks we had our camp scheduled.
Okay.
So in 6 weeks I was doing, with my PCL that had been completely severed, torn out of its top insertion, pulled a piece of bone out with it, doctors saying it'd be impossible to reattach it without surgery. And I knew it was going to either start shriveling up and being absorbed like they said. Lucky it wouldn't lock up on me in the process. Either degenerate and be absorbed, or I'd have to reattach it very quickly. And I took it right to God, having that, I was taught with God all things are possible. And me personally, I believe the laws of God and the laws of nature are one and the same. And, some people prefer to call it one, some people prefer to call it the other, but different names for the same thing. But I was shown, I had a good enough science background then to be shown a technique to produce stem cells and actually pinpoint a specific part of the body, and also be able to produce them for every part of our body every day, which I was shown that it's something that we're all capable of. Talk about the technique. It's a consciousness technique. It's not needles. In fact, most of the technology involving needles is illegal, and it's illegal for a reason. It's very dangerous when you pull stem cells out for any period of time and then reintroduce them to any part of the body you want to try to regenerate, because they start specializing, and initially there's a few categories that have different tissues. So there's 1/3 of those that are showing positive results. 1/3 of them, they say, has no recognizable positive results, and 1/3 actually has very strong negative results when people use needles to solve the problem, because it's really dangerous to start growing skin tissue in the kidneys or bone in your eyes.
Wow.
You know, just as an example. So when you're doing it, just understanding how the body is created to do it on your own, it takes a special key and opening that door to kind of allow that floodgate to offer that blessing for you. And it's not just any kind of prayer, but with the right words, actually verbalizing the actual physiology, which is the actual functionality of how we're able to do it, is the key. So that
so you were able
reattached it.
It did.
Yeah. And the latest thing, about 20 years later, I was in a motorcycle accident, and I always believed that it was reattached, but I didn't have the after MRI until another accident happened. I flew over the top of a car, lots of injuries, including re-injuring that knee. And I said, well, how's the PCL, doc, when they offered a surgery again? And they said, it's fine. I said, are you sure? Because it's not supposed to be there, according to the top orthopedic surgeons. They said that it would just be absorbed, 20 years ago. So this is 25 years ago now. And since then, having a more proof that it did reattach, because I've always been able to do all the things that I've done before. And a couple years ago on my birthday, Steve Jennings, the author of The Way of the Invincible Warrior, was in a car accident. He's someone who is very well known around this part of California, Southern California. He was at Cedars-Sinai, which is an insurance-run hospital, and I think he had donor on his driver's license. But he'd been someone who'd been in a coma before and recovered, and he'd tell all of his friends, even in his book, if you have anyone in a coma, don't pull the plug. He's a big advocate for that. But they decided, since his right and left hemisphere of his brain were severed, the neurons that connect them were severed, they didn't believe he'd ever be able to breathe on his own. And I heard the news they were planning on pulling the plug in 24 hours when I just happened to be on my birthday 2 years ago doing a big full day training, and this is one of the techniques that I was going to teach anyway, is what to do for everything from the neck up and target, because I had my own head injury that I'd healed 3 years prior to that, which is about 5 years ago now, but how to really target everything from the neck up with everything that I've learned how to develop for myself and my own head injury. My main vein in my head was blocked for 9 months and I wasn't even paralyzed. The superior sagittal sinus that's responsible for bringing blood back from the brain to the heart, and somehow I wasn't paralyzed through that. But there are some other things that I can get into to explain why scientifically. There are reasons why, for example, young children, when they have a big head injury, why doctors say they're just more resilient when they don't have the major stroke or whatever you'd normally expect from an older person. That's just what they say when they don't understand the science behind it. So when you activate the processes in an adult that are active when someone that's much younger, you can have the same type of results. But going back to Steve Jennings, I had about 130 people that I live streamed the video, and I basically offered it as a free gift. And so they were also part of Steve's healing. And that takes a lot of load off myself, because I don't want to be the one that that's there to help everybody. People can help themselves. And when you understand the process, you can perform it just as fast as me or anybody. That's the whole point. And the processes are duplicatable. Every miracle has a process behind it. And if you understand that process, you can perform the miracle. So Steve Jennings, 24 hours after they unplugged him, he was breathing on his own, which shocks everyone, right? But they're an insurance-run hospital. Doctors have a list of things insurance companies give them, what they can do for protocols, and if it's not on that list, they can't do it. So all that was left over was to continue the morphine, up in the dose more and more until he died 48 hours after they pulled the plug. He was breathing on his own while they were upping the dose of morphine, basically pushing the spirit out of the body. And he showed up 3 hours before he died. And he wasn't just showing up to me, I found out. I was a speaker at the main celebration that they had for him in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills. And I asked everybody in that room, which I think this is still on Facebook, what happened a couple years ago. I asked everyone who had him show up to them, who he visited, as people often hear about. I'd asked everyone who had that experience to raise their hand, and every single hand in that room went up. And when he showed up to me, I actually put a post on Facebook, and all this is documented also in a membership area. I put the actual video that I used for him to help with the healing that he had, in membership area that I have that I don't turn anybody away from. And then he showed up basically thanking me for healing, and he said, it's like been this miraculous thing, like I'm back. Thank you so much. And it's like, gave me a big hug. And I thought that he was actually going to make it. I put my post up, and 3 hours later, according to the medical records, he passed away.
Yeah.
I was in New York while all this was happening, while he was in Cedars-Sinai, but a lot of his friends were closer around Southern California area because of where he's from. And I was posting all those on his support group page that was created to help with friends. So anyway, to be able to reattach a right and left brain within 24 hours, it doesn't surprise me anymore what we're capable of. The healing, the way that the cells work when their life processes are turned on, we produce 300 million cells a minute just to keep the number of human cells in the body constant. Now that sounds like instantaneous healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And rejuvenation. Instant rejuvenation.
Yeah. I say to solve the aging, all we need to do is regenerate faster than we degenerate.
Right.
And then it's done. It's not really tied to our biological clock. Our clock every day still goes around like everybody's does, the same speed. But if our aging process was really connected to our chrono, which I call how long we've been alive, if we all lived long enough, we'd all die at the same time, and we don't. So there's a guy named Norman Walker, the original juice man, who just stopped celebrating birthdays. And he ended up living to be 118 years. Not that we knew that while he was alive, because we didn't. It was a mystery. And he didn't brag about it.
Right.
But after he passed, his wife found a natal record.
That would still be acknowledging an aging process. You have to get that out of your mind.
The programming.
Yeah.
The power of the word is magic.
Yeah.
It really is.
Do you teach this technique?
Yes, I do. I have a whole bunch of techniques in a power heal system because one technique doesn't replace another. And there's processes for prenatal empowerment also. And I do a technique called instant mass healing with live audiences. But I also show people how to do that for themselves and for others. They can do it. They can learn how to do it for others one-on-one really easy. I have 100% success for that. And it's like the process doesn't impress anyone. When you learn the secret behind the miracle, that secret really doesn't impress anybody. Which reminds me of great magicians giving up the secret to their magic trick. The secret impresses no one. So. But you still, and it's still a miracle, even if you do know the secret behind it.
A miracle, by definition, is just the unexpected.
Yeah.
It's just the unexpected, right? We get so programmed in our altered ego state to expect things that have been previously demonstrated. Now, one would say that that's a form of insanity, right? That expecting something so miracles would be insane, right? You would expect something that's been the same all the time to show up differently. So then we call it a miracle. But it's accepting the possibilities. We support in the teaching, it's accepting the possibilities of the now, not living in a previous state. Okay, that's where expectations come from. Okay.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you?
One of my main websites is clarityuniversity.com, and if you ask me, if I need to, I will gift you a membership area of another program. TheLawsOfEmpowerment.com is another one of my .coms that it's my newest program. It's designed to show people how to create world peace. And if that's what I need to do, even if I need to gift it to you, all you need to do is send me a message that you'd like that gift, and I'm happy to just share that with you. You can, I text it to people, I send it out on Facebook, you can connect with me that way. I'm almost at the 5,000 friend limit, but if you ask me just on the message, on my profile, Stephen Ezra West, and if you spell it with a P-H-E-N, Stephen, and then just type in EZ for Ezra, I'll be at the top of the list. I don't think there's any other Stephen Ezras out there or something.
Oh, there might be 4.
Well, there might. I think I'm also connected to Michael, the Archangel, and some others, but like a lot of that's come up. Prenatal empowerment, I think the best way to develop evolve human consciousness is while the babies are in the womb. I've been doing that for 22 years, and they're born with beyond photographic memory. It's taken that long to figure out where they're at by the time they're 21. But we can upload data files like the English language, for example, in a very rapid period of time because we're doing things on a subconscious level, which works way faster than our conscious abilities. So anyway, that's just something else that kind of fits within the theme. I think that the elites, when they're thinking that getting the kids at 3 or 4, that they're ahead of the ball game, they're actually way behind the learning curve, is what we've learned. And some parents have been already in alignment with the prenatal empowerment. The principles are in action, whether we're aware of them or not. And some of us are just have been more in alignment with it. But when we know what they are, we can do it more on purpose and create the type of minds and bodies that a lot of the beings that they've already earned and they've just been waiting for this time. They're coming in to help guarantee that the work that we're doing, to help guarantee that it is a successful event.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Tell everybody
Casey.
one more time how to get a hold of you.
So go to clarityuniversity.com and there's a place to message me right from there. And it's also able to link you to some of the other sites.
Thanks everybody for being with us. We'll continue our programming as we integrate all of this super energy fields, expanding your minds, expanding your state of awareness, sending love and blessings your way.